It's foggy in Ramsgate this morning, and as I wake up from my nightmare, I look out of my bedroom window, through the condensation on the panes of distorted glass, and look for the gulls circling above the tower of St. George's. Alas, no gulls, and no cross of St. George either, which strangely I miss, although I can't say why. I get up and head for the bathroom, and catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. When I look closer and try and focus, I can see that I'm out of shape. My body is pasty white and my skin blotchy. I'm not really fat, but I've been eating bread and carbs since coming back from America, and my gut is bloated like a baby elephant, and I appear to have developed what I can only describe as a double chin. And my hair is greasy. It's thick and long, but not long enough to tie back, and hangs like a curtain in front of my eyes, which is a kind of torture only Fu Manchu could have invented. I go down and make coffee, and then go back to bed and write. I love being in bed, not to sleep necessarily, but to catch a movie, or read, or pokey pokey obviously, although that was so long ago I don't even remember the last time. I do remember being ill at school, and being confined to sick bay, and missing classes, and the matron would coming in and asking how I was. It was absolute bliss. My bedroom now is probably my favourite room in the house. It faces southeast and is today filled with soft winter light, and I can see the gulls have returned and are flying in murmuration around the church tower, sometimes in silence or sometimes with their chorus of hysterical cries. Only God knows what they're saying to each other. Oh yes, that's good. I think I'm going to write that down. When I can't make of what I'm writing anymore, I get up and have a shower in the garden. I moved the shower outside because it was cramped and dark in the house, and in any case, it's infinitely more enjoyable. I think I first got into it in Africa as a child. Some people are not comfortable with it, either because they're afraid of being seen naked, or that it might get cold. But it's actually wonderful, even on a cold day, when you get the mixture of hot from the water and cold from the air. I turn the shower on so it runs piping hot when I take off my clothes, and then stand under the torrent of water, completely happy for a couple of minutes. Once I've shaved and dressed, I decide to go up to the barber's and have my hair cut short. I wear my hair long, I remember telling the barber last time I was in there, which probably sounded as stupid as it was, although it sounded alright when Elvis said it. When I get there I find it closed, which of course it would be, being locked down. And once I'm home I'm so determined to lose my hair that I cut most of it off with scissors over the bathtub, and then go over it with my electric shaver. It doesn't look too bad, as it happens, and I congratulate myself on saving 10 quid and not having to exchange pleasantries with the barber. I'm not saying it looks nice. In fact, I actually look like one of the convicts in Van Gogh's study of Newgate Prison Yard, but at least it's out of my face and I can go swimming without it becoming a bother. A great big lump of dark auburn hair sits on a pile under the bathroom sink, looking like a dead animal, and I leave it there for a couple of days because it looks so curious. Perhaps I'm missing my dog. I get back in the shower to wash off the hair tickle, and then go down to see Michael the fish for my oysters. I have this idea about oysters that they're incredibly good for you, having all the nutrients of the sea, and that we humans were once sea creatures ourselves. I think it's probably a good idea to have my microphone at the ready, just in case he says something interesting. But as I approach, he clocks me plugging it in, and immediately he's on his guard, just in case he says something he regrets, and I can see in his eyes that it's caused a kind of lack of trust. I shall have to be careful about that, since what I'm trying to do is make a program that is not only truthful, but spontaneous and natural, which is what you want from any encounter with another human being. And so I eat my oysters and order some whelks to go, because they're also strange and delicious, and probably very good for you. And I make my way down the quay. I'm still recording at this point, even though a voice in my head says stop recording. You're just going to end up with hours of unusable audio that's taking up all the storage on your phone. When I spot Congo Natty on his 1970s Raleigh chopper outside the bike shop under the arches. He looks like he might be on the phone, or perhaps he's just talking to himself. I know, if he's on the phone I'll just keep walking, and if he's not, I'll say hello. Hi man, I say. Greetings brother, Congo replies, and extends a clenched fist. I'm just off for my morning swim, I tell him. That's basically my conversation opener. Anyway, we talk about the power of water and being connected, and why we're not connected, and the power of music, and how not being able to perform or watch live music during the pandemic is bad. But it's also good because it's an opportunity to connect with yourself, and so on and so forth. The microphone is still attached to my lapel, and my phone is still in record. And so I'm recording our conversation, and I'm thinking, if he sees that I'm recording our conversation, there's going to be a loss of trust, and he'll probably be pissed off. In any case, I don't know why I'm recording it, because I won't be able to use it. Because what am I going to do? Tell him afterwards that I was recording our conversation without asking him? Or not tell him, and he finds out for himself when he listens to the programme, which would be even worse. Then the foghorn sounds, and I make some reference to the soundtrack of Ramsgate, at which point Congo turns on his phone and plays some reggae dub. I don't know if it's his music or someone else's. And it's good, but I'm not going to hang out with Congo Natty, dreg skanking to dub, while I'm still in record and wondering when he's going to clock the microphone on my lapel. And so I say, well, I'm going for my swim. And he does the clenched fist thing, actually the double clenched fist thing this time, which I take to be a good sign, and I stroll off down the quay. He's a little awkward, and we're a little awkward together, but we don't really know each other, not very well. And obviously there's a bit of ego going on. We are men after all. But he's cool. I mean, he's not trying to impress, he's sincere, and I like that. It's what I'm trying to do fundamentally, or at least what I think I should be doing if I'm not questioning myself all the time. He certainly has a lot of hair under that bonnet. I think that's what they call the woolly hat that the Rastas wear. It's so weird, the Jamaican Scottish thing, porridge and all that stuff from when the Scots ran the slave plantations. But thinking about that makes me a little uncomfortable. I guess the long hair thing is spiritual, like it is for Sikhs. But since I'm swimming in the sea and doing Zen meditation, I don't need my hair. I don't need to look cool or be attractive. I'm not looking for a girlfriend. Well, not today anyway. And I know that I look like a skinhead. But in reality, it doesn't matter what I look like, does it? What do you want to look like? What do you think you look like? I remember years ago I brought a big hat and I was wearing it one day. And someone came up to me and pointed at my hat and said, Bono. And I thought, okay, well, I've got nothing against Bono. He's a talented young man. But I'm not trying to be Bono or even look like him. Why can't I wear a hat without looking like someone else? Anyway, that conversation just went on in my head and not with the person who called me Bono. Funny how the mind regurgitates unresolved memories from the distant past. It's almost as if it does it on purpose. So I get to the beach and I make a quick video for my girlfriend, who's not talking to me because her dog just died. I know it's very sad. I'm also sad about it, and I think a message might help. And so I film the beach and the waves and describe how cold it is and how cold my hands are getting just holding the camera. And then I turn the camera on me and I say, I love you and I miss you and I'm sorry about the pup, who was actually 12, so not exactly a pup, but she was sweet. And I kind of loved her, even though she did growl at me every time I got into bed. And then I go and start my Taiji routine, trying not to think what the passers-by are thinking about me dancing around there on the beach. But of course no one really cares. I feel lucky to have this, to come down to the beach and do some exercises and breathe in that incredible air that if I had any business sense, I would bottle and export to every city in the world. And so nice to be outdoors to exercise. Because it's not just exercising the body, but being surrounded by the air and the light and the moving sky and the birds and the crashing waves. It's like being a tiny speck within the vast universe. But at the same time, it's a tiny speck within you, like the whole universe is in your hand. And moving the body, not just exercising one group of muscles at a time like you do in the gym, but kind of waking up the body, like every part of it is alive. Every part of it has awareness and intelligence. And by closing down the thinking mind, you open up a deeper, more powerful part of you that allows you to feel the subtleties of what you're training that simply would not be possible if you're just trying to work it out in your head. Well, that's the theory anyway. If you think about it too much, it doesn't make sense anymore. And so I start my warm-up exercises to loosen the body and train the vertical and horizontal waves that you use to throw people. But it's not so much of a martial art. It is, of course, if you're good enough, which I'm not, and probably never will be. 15 years to learn the basics and a lifetime to master, they say. But it's also a meditation, a way of listening to yourself, working out who you are without needing an image of yourself, without an ego. But for some reason that thought makes me self-conscious, and I look up at the cliff top and I can see people walking by and looking down at me, and some swing their arms to mimic mine. But nobody's pointing and laughing. It's all good-humoured. I guess it looks a bit silly when you haven't seen it before. But maybe not as silly as paying a subscription to run on an electric treadmill inside an air-conditioned gym, watching TV and checking your heart rate on your mobile phone. I can see on the sands the Mermads, they call themselves, have arrived for their daily swim. They come with their bags and their big dry coats in blue, black or camouflage green, and I watch them as they chat and get undressed, pulling on rubber swimming hats and gloves as they descend into the cold sea. I take my mind back inside and watch the clouds moving across the sky and try and get in sync with them, my body rising and floating and sinking, constantly moving. And it feels good to be the observer, not to have to decide or to judge or to get what I want. Just to exist without agenda is eternal bliss. Back at Paradise, I eat my whelks with pickled baby beetroot, which sound posh but aren't, and a slice of the sourdough bread that I get from the Polish lady. They're completely delicious, but if you didn't know that already, you wouldn't eat them because they actually look disgusting. They're basically a sea slug, a pasty creamy white colour with black spots on the edges. Anyway, very good for you, no doubt. So if Michael the fish thinks they're going to run out soon, not because of the little pot that I'm eating, or that they sold them by the barrelful to visiting cockneys on the quay for a couple of 100 years, but because they now go off to Asia by the ton in container lorries every single week. And because we can't see under the ocean, well, not without scuba diving or being in a submarine, we don't really know what's down there. We can't really appreciate the complexities of the ecological equilibrium. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air. No, I don't believe it was all put there just for man's consumption. And it's disappointing the government giving away the fishing rights after they promised they wouldn't. Somehow the phrase, white man speaks with forked tongue, comes to mind. How is it that conservation wasn't mentioned as one of the benefits of the exit deal? It was all about jobs and the economy and GDP and growth and profit and dividends and sovereignty, which is a lovely word, but means jack shit. And how that all contributes to the nation's well-being and happiness. A few years ago, a 45-foot sperm whale washed up on the beach between Ramsgate and Pegwell Bay. The picture of the gentle giant fills me with a deep and foreboding dread. Eventually the whale died on the beach, but it's not known why it washed up there, most likely the victim of swallowing plastic or being driven mad by the sound of the wind farm or the jet skis. After pulling us out of Europe, the government is now trying to do trade deals with China and India and Australia, any country, as long as it's on the other side of the world, and all the ecological ramifications that go with it. I mean, I love blueberries on my porridge, but not if they have to come from Chile, for God's sake. And does Mexico produce anything now except avocados? I may have to get an allotment. I wonder why they used to call Kent the Garden of England. And didn't the harvesting of all that fruit and hops provide employment for travellers and, dare I say it, DFLs? The industrialisation of the port is one of the biggest issues currently in Ramsgate. Opinion is divided between those that remember the jobs created by the ferries and the airport and the coal mines, and those who want to encourage the visitors back, protect the environment, and have a better quality of life for themselves, mainly the DFLs. When the Channel ferries stopped running after 6 people died in 1994 when a gangway collapsed, the route was already losing money. Dover, on the other hand, had invested heavily. Since the ferry company pulled out, owing the council over £1 million, the port has been virtually unused, partly because the loading bays aren't big enough for larger vessels. And just down the road, we have the Channel Tunnel, which only takes 35 minutes to France. But the district council are convinced Ramsgate could become another major seaport, even though there's no interest from any of the ferry companies. To make any other kind of development unlikely, they granted a long lease to an aggregate company, planning for them to build a plant on the site, which involves taking out thousands of tons of sand from the bay and washing the salt out of it before turning it into the toxic cocktail called cement. Then have it taken away by their lorries, which tear up and down the harbour approach road, where everybody is bathing and enjoying the beach. When the road is closed, which it often is when they need to change a light bulb in the tunnel, which incidentally was also built with EU money, the trucks turn the other way through the old harbour, and you can almost see the Victorian arches shaking as they drive by. But it turned out that they hadn't bothered to get an ecological survey, which was illegal under EU law. And after local objections were made, the expansion scheme collapsed. God knows what will happen now we're out of the EU, and if the cement company want to continue leasing the site, that will inevitably prevent any other kind of development that would benefit the town, and make it so ugly that no visitors would ever want to come here. Another plan was a waste incineration plant. That would certainly put Ramsgate on the map. You'd be able to see the plume of black smoke for miles. Meanwhile, the Mermads are enjoying what made Ramsgate so fashionable and affluent: the sea. That's swimming in the sea in the days of the old bathing machines, and the establishments that offered hot sea baths and cold plunges and seaweed treatments, and people even drinking the stuff, all in the name of good health. And of course it wasn't just bathing in the sea, it was looking at it and enjoying its calming and restorative effect, which is all T.S. Eliot needed to recover from a nervous breakdown and write The Wasteland, even though that was in Margate. And the sea air, the delicious air that you can fill your lungs and bring oxygen into your blood and into the brain and expand your consciousness. It's almost a religious experience. People flocked here to rejuvenate themselves. In the Victorian era, the hoi polloi would get off the steam packet at Margate, and the hoity-toity would go on to Ramsgate. Charles Darwin would bring his daughter Anna here for sea bathing treatments, and rented a house on the Paragon. I wonder what he would have thought about the cement company pulling tons of sand out of the bay and all those sea creatures with it. The famous Isabella Baths, which is now the Churchill Arms, opened in 1816. A guidebook said at the time, "All the baths are formed of white marble, in the dimensions of the celebrated baths of Naples." And there were other high-end bathing establishments on the West Cliff and at the harbour, and it's why the visitors came. That and to promenade and to dance and to have affairs away from the prying eyes of London. But the sea was also a cure for serious medical conditions like tuberculosis. The Margate Sea Hospital, where patients received a variety of treatments with a central focus on sunshine, fresh air and sea bathing, which must have saved a fortune in pharmaceuticals, was only fairly recently sold, and yes, converted into flats. The Granville Hotel, now also flats, was used in the First World War as a hospital for Canadian soldiers suffering from shell shock. And within the massive hotel complex, there were 3 separate sea treatment bathhouses, the last of which was only demolished in 1980, in spite of the entire building being listed 7 years before. The gaping great hole on the side of the building remains today, while some speculator waits for the price of the land to go up. And the Ramsgate Hospital, listed in 1988, is also now flats. Is there really no interest left for alternative therapies, herbal or homeopathic, physiotherapy or seawater treatments, or a band-aid when Johnny grazes his knee? Or do we have to wait until we all get critically ill and need surgery? I mean, does everyone really want to go to Margate to catch MRSA and COVID? You have to drive for a start, or get on the loop, which is enough to make anyone ill. But centralisation is about saving money, and saving money means the councils can do more with our money. It's about efficiency, but if you put all your eggs in one basket, well, you know what can happen. There appears to be an absence of emotional investment from the councillors who don't live in Ramsgate. Ramsgate Borough Council was swallowed up when Thanet District Council was formed in 1974, but the merger was fraught with problems, and eventually both Ramsgate and Broadstairs got their town councils back, but with limited power and an even more limited budget. Most visibly, responsibility for housing and planning was retained by the district council. Margate didn't bother getting their own council back, as the lion's share of the spending was already being sucked up by projects like the Turner Gallery and the refurbishment of the modern council offices, which were built on the site of the Hippodrome Theatre. Somehow Margate managed to retain their old town, which today is a massive tourist draw. But in Ramsgate those houses were cleared in favour of the Leopold Street car park, home to about 3 cars and a lot of urine, the Argyle Centre, which today is mostly empty, and that pig-ugly hotel which replaced the elegant Georgian frontage facing the harbour. Whoever granted planning for that certainly didn't have a sense of aesthetics or scale. The loss of the theatres is always sad. One that survived, largely because it was hidden in the cliff, was the West Cliff Concert Hall. The Rolling Stones played there in 1964, and it was last used as a car museum, but today has fallen into serious disrepair. There were plans to save it fairly recently, but it turned out that the cast iron structure of the 1914 building was badly corroded, and basically the whole thing needs rebuilding. The hall is literally built into the cliff looking out to the sea, but the once spectacular view is now marred by the ugly cement plant. The future of the hall is unsure, but the town desperately needs public spaces if it's going to once again attract a crowd. And can the town rely on Airbnb to accommodate all the tourists who flock here now we can't take our cheap holidays abroad? Okay, so there'll be a hotel attached to the Royal Sands, but with so many of the pubs being turned into flats, not just the Eagle near where I live, but the Foy Boat, the Admiral Fox, the Forester's Arms, the Georgian Dragon, the Duke of York, the Paragon Inn, the West Cliff Tavern, the Trafalgar. Where are all the visitors going to eat and drink? No wonder there's always a big queue outside Wetherspoons. It's enough to drive you to drink, and I nip into my local superstore to pick up some cut-price booze. Actually, I tell myself I need prunes, but I know deep down that I'm there for the cheap wine. I stand staring at the shelf looking for the yellow ticket that says it's on offer. Okay, £7.50 for a bottle of Saint-Emilion isn't bad. It's normally £10.50, which is a good discount. And in any case, since the government took us out of Europe, wine is due to go up by another £1.50. So if I buy 2 bottles, I'll save £3. So that's more than a third, absolutely free. I grab 2 bottles and congratulate myself on making £6, which of course I haven't really, but head towards the till anyway. At the last minute, a man who looks Eastern European arrives with his trolley and starts unloading bottles of whiskey and gin and vodka and beer. Golly, this guy makes me look like an amateur. As he's handing over banknotes from a thick wad that he's taken from his pocket, I'm thinking, how the hell does he afford all that booze? He probably works all hours under the sun, but he must hate his job if he has to drink so much. And I wonder if he has a family, and if his wife minds him spending so much money on booze. Who knows? It might be all for her. I get back to the house and open a bottle. It's only 3 o'clock, but I'm working from home, so it's fine. And in any case, I'll probably be in bed by 4, because the house is so cold. I sit at the dining room table and start writing, but after the second or third glass I give up and go and do the washing up instead. And then I think I might as well make some dal for later. Okay, so I'm not writing, but I'm not wasting the afternoon. In fact, I'm being productive. I mean, I have to eat after all. When the dal is ready, I think I might as well eat it, and I'm going to need a glass of wine with it, but somehow the bottle is empty, and so I open the second bottle and sit at the table. Yes, it's all very civilised. This is probably what Hemingway did in the afternoons while he was writing all those wonderful stories. I decide going to bed at 4 o'clock is ridiculous, and in any case, I'm not drinking red wine in bed, so I polish off the rest of it. And I'm now on Amazon buying stuff that I don't need, until it gets to 6 o'clock, and then I think, God, it's cold down here. I think I'm going to bed. I love bed. My girlfriend calls. It's mid-morning for her, but I can tell straight away that she's stressed about something. Now, she's told me before that she doesn't want any advice or need me to fix anything. She just wants me to listen and perhaps say, don't worry, it's going to be all right, love. She has a real problem with mansplaining, which is a word I've only recently learnt. It's basically men talking and always thinking that they're right and treating you like you're an idiot, and most of all, not listening. So even though I know this, and to be more precise, I have 2 bottles of Santa Million inside me. I make the fatal mistake of offering a solution. But that triggers such an explosion of indignation and anger that I have to hold the phone away from my ear, and I don't dare say anything else. And then suddenly she says, "Hold on for a moment, I'll call back." And she hangs up. She doesn't call back, and when I message her later, she says that the dog is dead. She died whilst we were arguing on the phone. The dog, a 6-ounce Pomeranian, had a heart condition. Well, she was 12, so not exactly young. But she would pick up on her mum's stress and get anxious. So much so in this case that she actually had a heart attack. Now this is unfortunate, not least because it happened whilst we were on the phone, and no doubt I was going to get the blame for it. But my girlfriend was more than a little emotionally attached to the creature. They flew around the world together. She ate a premium raw meat diet that was delivered to the door, with at least a dozen supplements and medication. And it also cost literally thousands of dollars a year in vet's fees, not least by the cardiologist who charged $700 every time he saw her. So we haven't spoken since, and it's been a few weeks now. You might imagine that was it, the relationship I mean. But there have been plenty of WhatsApp messages backwards and forwards, but she couldn't speak to me because she says she's traumatized about the dog and the fact that it died while she was on the phone to me. I said to her once, "You love your dog more than me," and she replied, "Of course I do." I wake up this morning with an eye full of blood, and I think maybe I should get it checked out. And so I call a local optician, and my first thought is how much is it going to cost me, because I'm broke. But it turns out that it's actually covered by the NHS. So I asked the woman on the phone if I can book an eye test as well, thinking that that might make her like me more. And she says, "That's no problem. We can book you in after you've had your eye looked at this afternoon." And I think, great, I'm really being looked after here. And I put the appointment in the diary and set an alarm on my phone so I can't forget. Put some brown rice on for lunch because I'm back on my health kick, which basically means no drinking. And my daughter calls to tell me about her course at uni, and we talk about my eye, and she tells me that her mother was just in hospital with a bloodshot eye. And I tell her I've been offered a dog, and she says she wants to come down and meet the dog. And I tell her I have to go because of my appointment, and I think I've just got time for a shower, and I take my clothes off and turn the shower on, and I get a message from my ex saying I can't have the dog she pleaded me to have because her sister now wants it, even though she said she didn't for a whole host of reasons, like it's too heavy to pick up, even though you're not supposed to pick up dachshunds because of their long spines. And I reply, "Don't worry, love, it's fine." And I jump in the shower and put some clean clothes on and shoot out the door. And although I'm feeling a bit stressed with everything happening all at once, I'm so happy my eye is fucked up, because now I can go and get it fixed, not only for free, which I'm really grateful for, but also it's something real, something legitimate for a change, as opposed to writing or buying wine or whatever it means not to be fully engaged with your life, namely security and consumption and all those other things that make you want to kill yourself, or at least makes me want to kill myself. And so I turn up at the appointment in what I can only describe as fine spirits. When I go in, however, I get what can only be described as a frosty reception, from the receptionist, that is, who won't even look at me, but barks at me to sanitize my hands. And when I ask her if she has a mask I can have, because I can't find mine and only have a scarf, throws a paper one at me, like the mask also hates me, and tells me to go and sit in the corner, like I've done something very bad, which as far as I know I haven't, apart from in that moment thinking that she was an uptight bitch. As I sit down, my ex is messaging me and trying to call to explain why I can't have the dog, and I can't take the call because I'm now scared of the receptionist, and in any case my specs are steaming up because of the mask and the fact that it's so hot in there. I can see the optometrist in his little room is getting stressed because he can't get the printer to work for his last patient. And anyway, he calls me in eventually, and I'm now in a sweat and bright red in the face with the heat. And I ask him if I can take my coat off. And I begin to tell him how I don't put the central heating on at home, and I'm not used to the heat. But he can't hear me because he's in such a hurry to get me in the chair and tell me I burst a blood vessel in my eye, which I already know. And then he tells me it's either because I poked myself in the eye in the middle of the night, or I have high blood pressure. He asks me if I've been doing anything about it, and I tell him I've talked to my doctor, and I'm trying to reduce it naturally, as opposed to taking medication. At which point he tuts and tells me a burst blood vessel in the eye is a symptom of what could be a much more serious problem. And if I got one in my brain, for example, that would be a stroke, and I would be dead. And then he asked me if I do anything that creates pressure in the abdomen. And I say, actually, yes, I do Tai Chi every day. And he says, no, Tai Chi is about relaxing. And I'm thinking, yes, relaxing in order to create pressure so you can throw someone. But I don't say that because I know I'll be wasting my time. And so I just ask him if he can look at my eye because it feels like I've got some grit in it or something. And then he tuts again and he tells me it's not grit, but a foreign body. And I think I didn't know there was any difference. And then he says he's really backed up today and my appointment is not an assessment. And I apologise and say I'm happy to make another appointment and pay for it. And so he tells me to put my face into the machine, which is a scary looking metal device, like the head of an Iron Maiden. And he drops some weird chemical in my eye and gets me to blink a few times and informs me I have dry eye syndrome, which is due to not producing enough tears. And I tell him I knew that, and is there anything I can do about it? And he says I can watch a YouTube video. And he tries to show me the link on his computer and then tells me it's not working properly since he upgraded the software. And I ask him if there's anything that can be done about dry eye, apart from eye drops. And he says, yes, I can use eye drops. And I ask him if it's just the kind I might buy from Boots or someplace. And he says, I shouldn't go to Boots. They don't pay any tax. And that he pays more tax than Boots do. And he has quite a lot to say about Boots and their little office in Switzerland. All of which takes about 5 minutes, which I would much rather have spent talking about my eye. And then I start feeling a bit sorry for him and wondering if he has high blood pressure too. And I follow him out to reception, which is a little scary, as I don't wish to see the receptionist ever again. And anyway, he asks her to sell me some eye drops, and she explains how to take them, which I don't listen to, because I would have thought it was obvious. And in any case, I can't hear what she's saying because of her mask. And then she charges me 13 quid or something, which is twice what I paid in Boots. And I say, thank you very much, and I head for the door, hoping she doesn't ask me about making an appointment for my eye test. But of course she doesn't, as she's as keen to see the back of me as I am of her. And when I get outside, I feel shaky and I think, okay, I need to go and buy some provisions. And I head towards the grocer's, but then remember I need some other things. So I turn around in the direction of the supermarket and have to pass the optician's window again, trying to duck down a little in the hope that she can't see me not knowing where I'm going. And then I remember I've forgotten my bag. So a tiny bit of grit in the eye can cause quite a lot of trouble, though actually it wasn't grit in the end, but dry eye caused by not crying enough. Well, there's a bitter irony.